All right, we have, you got other hazards that are on a job site other than just asbestos, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now one of the things that we're most concerned about is going to be electricity. We're going to lock out, tag out the electrical system, and we're going to string electrical wiring all over the place. And of course, we're spraying water inside our containment as well. And you know, electricity is very much dangerous, as this person in India is going to show us. This one. Yeah, fire gangs. He's on fire.
What? Oh, that is on fire too.
Yep. That's very good. All right, over 1,000 people a year electrocute themselves. If we're not careful on a job site, you could be number 1,001. So the best way to avoid these things is through proper planning before the job starts, okay? Instead of dealing with somebody who has been electrocuted, or for that matter, an electrical fire. So some of the steps that we're going to take to cut down the chances of electrocution, electric shock, or electrical fire is, first of all, when you have your power board built after you lock out, tag out the electrical system inside the work area, is have your power board built by a licensed electrician. Okay, don't have your cousin show up because he says he knows how to work with electricity, and what he really means is he hooks up his Christmas lights every year. Okay, don't do that. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to put GFIs on every electrical cord that we have, a ground fault interrupter. These things are also known as ground fault circuit interrupters. Okay. Now remember, they do not eliminate; they reduce the chances of electrocution or electric fire. But they are one of the things that we're going to do to cut down. Once again, proper planning, right? Something else that we're going to do is every place where two of your cords come together, you're going to do something to make sure that they don't fall apart. You can either wrap them in duct tape, or they do make special connectors now to hold them in place. But there has to be something to make sure that your cords just don't fall apart. And also, your electrical cords have to be taped up on the walls. They can't be allowed to trail down on the floor, because of course we're going to have water on the floor, because we do wet removal in asbestos. You find that just about every hazard that you can have on a job site can be lessened in this manner, okay? Fires. What are some of the things that we're going to do when it comes down to fire for planning? First of all, to keep it from happening in the first place, and then so that we know what to do if a fire actually does break out. Well, one of the things that you would do is know the qualities and possible dangers of chemicals that you're going to bring to your job site, right? You're going to have a material safety data sheet, an MSDS, for everything that you bring to your job site, so you can see what's the flash point, right? If it does burst into flames, can I put it out with water? Do I need chemical? Do I need sand or baking soda, right? To put it out. How do I put the fire out? How do I keep it from bursting into flames? And if a fire does start, how do I stop it? For instance, you can't put a grease fire out with water. So those would be some of the things that we would do as far as planning. You're going to put, in case a fire does start, you have to be properly trained on how to put it out, the type of extinguisher that you need. But there are also things that you're going to need to do on how to get out of your job site if a fire does break out and you're not able to stop it. Are we going to put arrows on the flaps on a decon so that we know which side to grab? Yeah. Are we going to put arrows on the walls inside of our container so that we know which way to go?
Yes.
Yeah, of course we're going to do those things. Okay. Do we notify fire and police before we start doing an abatement job so that they know what to bring to an asbestos abatement job? It's not just a normal fire scene. We're going to have all the emergency information listed for anybody So any worker can see whenever they would need to see it. Not every place, believe it or not, even in our modern age of 2012, is a 911 community. All right, you're going to have the nearest trauma center listed. All this information has to be listed publicly, openly, for workers, everybody in the crew to see it very easily. All right? If a fire does break out, a very important standard to remember is asbestos regulations go out of the window. They go out of the window in any emergency situation. Okay, a fire breaks out, we're not going to line up at the decon in order to shower out. If, let's say we have a crew of 20, even at 90 seconds of shower, that's a half an hour. And that last guy is just supposed to be sitting there just waiting patiently for that half an hour to go by with the flames licking on his ass. No, it's not going to happen. We're going to get out, we're going to get out as fast as we can. We'll worry about how to clean up any contaminants that got out of our work area. We'll worry about that later. All asbestos-related diseases have a long latency period, right? So what's going to kill you first, the fire or asbestosis 25, 30 years from now? I mean, it would be a ridiculous trade-off to make. Something else that you're going to have to do as far as it goes for safety procedures is somebody has to be responsible for grabbing the containment log and signing logs for that sheet in case for that day in case there's a fire. Because you have to make sure that everybody got out of containment. You have to have a rally point, and this all has to be identified before the job starts. Where are you going to meet outside of your work area, outside of the job site, so that the supervisor can count heads to make sure that everybody got out? Firefighters fight fires very differently in unoccupied buildings than they do in occupied buildings. If they know that everybody is outside, they'll fight the fires from the outside and they won't put themselves at excessive risk. But I think we all know that firefighters will take insane risks if they know that there's a life that needs to be saved inside. Those guys have the right to only have to risk themselves when it's necessary. And that's why we have to have a rally point so that the supervisor can count heads, and somebody has to take responsibility for grabbing the logs so that the supervisor has the list from which to count heads. Now, fire and electricity are not the only hazards that we have on a job site. Another problem that we run into on asbestos removal jobs is heat stroke. It gets really hot inside containment, particularly in the summer, right? So what's something that you could do preemptively to protect yourself from heat stroke, heat exhaustion?
Hydrate.
Huh?
Hydrate.
Keep yourself hydrated.
Keep yourself hydrated, right? Don't go out, don't go out boozing until 3 o'clock in the morning the night before, right? And I know this is going to put a big crimp in the lives of people who live in Indiana, but but for the rest of us, this should be pretty much a no-brainer. Yeah, don't drink a lot of alcohol the night before. Don't drink a lot of coffee when you get up in the morning. Coffee is a diuretic, just like alcohol is a diuretic. They dry you out. So those are some of the things that you do. What are some of the symptoms of heat stroke, heat exhaustion?
Dizziness.
Yeah, you could be dizzy, okay.
Shiveriness.
Huh?
You get cold.
Yeah, you can start shivering. Those are all symptoms. If you notice that a coworker isn't sweating, it's hot as all heck inside. If he's like deep red, that can be a bad thing. I don't know how it's on you, but But if a coworker is beet red, you see somebody not sweating. If they just seem to be confused, they don't really know what's going on. Okay. Now some of these things the two that I really use are you're not sweating, or if you notice that you're shivering. Okay, because I know people who all day, every day are confused. That's just normally how they are. Okay. Another symptom that some people have is they get headaches. Right? Anybody here married? Well, you know all about headaches, right? As in, not tonight because I have a headache. You got any kids? You got one. So, okay, another symptom of heat stroke is nausea. But before that kid was born, when she had morning sickness, she was nauseous. So is it heat stroke or is it just being warm? It's hard to tell. Shivering or if you're not sweating. Okay, and what do you do in this situation? Same thing as in any other emergency situation. You need to get out of containment as fast as you can. especially if you notice that you're not shivering, I'm running straight to the shower and just pour some water on me anyway. All right? If you have a worker who falls out, just falls off a ladder, busts the back of his head, all right, what do you do? What's the protocol for that situation? Let the inside guy know so we can call 911. All right. When the fire department shows up, no, we're not going to be checking them for licenses or certificates or physicals or fit tests. First of all, they bring their respiratory protection, but yes.
So if someone passes out inside of the work area, do you decontaminate that person as you go out, or do you break the containment area?
Break containment. We'll let the hospital, we're going to let make sure that the hospital that he's going to know, so they probably have protocols, they will have protocols to deal with people that are coming from hazmat situations that would have toxic contaminants on them, and we're going to make that problem theirs. We're not going to stop if somebody is passed out in containment, they're knocked out. First of all, if he's fallen off a ladder, you have the possibility of neck or head injury. As an untrained personnel, we're not going to move him at all. We're going to wait for people that are properly trained, because you can paralyze someone. So we're just going to leave him there. You may want to take, especially if you've just got a half mask on, take that respirator off, because it's harder to breathe, and it may be too hard for an unconscious person to breathe with that respirator on. Take your Hudson sprayer and mist the air above him, so that the fibers, so he's not breathing any more fibers in that are absolutely necessary. And then we're going to wait for the fire department to show up. If you have somebody who, same worker, they fall off the ladder, they bust the back of their head, and it looks like they're going to bleed out before the paramedics get there. Well, remember, we live in an age where blood can kill, okay? And you pick up all sorts of nicks and cuts from handling utility knives all the time. And the best way to protect yourself from whoever that worker, whatever his lifestyle is, take some poly, wrap it around your hand first, then grab a towel and apply pressure. So you can do both staunch the blood and protect yourself from, you don't know what he has, right? Okay? So these are some of the procedures and policies that we have in place for hazards that we have on a job site, okay? Just in general, you find that, like for instance, back in the 1970s, when we really liked our disaster movies, right? Irwin Allen, Towering Inferno, Poseidon Adventure, all the airport movies. Anybody ever seen the airplane movies? Well, the airport movies, the first ones made in 1970, were spoofs of the airport movies. Well, there was one, it was about a car pilot in Southern California, like 100 cars. And it started off with the accident. Then you met all the main characters, and it took them back to the beginning of the day. And you showed how they ended up, the decisions that they made that ended up with them at that point, at that time. Like one guy, Buddy Ebsen's character, his wife was sick, so he had to take his kid to school. So he took a different route, otherwise he wouldn't have been. Okay? And it's just the choices that you make. And you can look, if you could go back through time, you could find where it went wrong. Where did that person make a decision that ended up with something really bad happening, right? Like a lot of times people, and you can find that just about every workplace accident, you can do the same thing. If you had a time machine, you could go back through time, you could find where it went wrong. A lot of times these things are described as being acts of God. They're not. God is not sitting up in heaven looking down at some worker and looks over at an angel and says, come here. You see him? Screw him. It doesn't work that way. Why did the ladder slide out from under the worker? Why did he bust his head? Why did he break his arm? Well, because 2 weeks earlier when two workers were prepping that room out, they laid the floor down loose. So then the worker 2 weeks later leaned a ladder up against it, and the ladder slid out from under because of the slack in the pop. Okay? Don't booby trap your job site. There are enough hazards on asbestos removal jobs without having to add to them through fire, through electric shock or electrocution, through booby trapping your job site and creating hazards. And if we all follow the proper procedures and protocols for these non-asbestos emergencies, we can all come home safe every day and live our lives and retire at the end of our careers. Thanks.